What is your most important communication tip when you are communicating with family, friends, clients, customers, colleagues? When you're communicating online, what would you say sort of is one of your guiding principles when you're dealing in communication?
I think you need to be assertive. Like for me, it's my voice comes natural. Like a lot, I think a lot of my success in many ways was not many people know how old I am. I'm only 33 years old, right? So when I'm 8 years ago, when I was in my 20s, I still sounded this way over the phone, and it was
Definitely sound like you could be on the radio, dude.
correct.
100%.
You can't create that voice, but you can create how you present yourself and how you portray yourself over the phone. And I think it comes down to confidence, and not the arrogant side of confidence, but actually knowing what you're talking about and standing up for really what you're trying to say, not for what you necessarily believe in. But even in any conversation, you got to take a stance and roll with it.
And being willing to, step out, right? I think a lot of people get, we all deal with self-doubt, no matter how you sound, seem, or whatever. But yeah, being confident, moving forward, understanding that, hey, look, the person on the other side of this phone or table or whatever got up today and got on the treadmill or didn't. They put on their pants just like I did, or their skirt or their blouse or whatever. They're a human being, right? And if you know what you're talking about, like you said, you got to be willing to back up your thought process, right? With confidence. I think that's really important. It's important for business. And maybe for you and I, they say I'm an A-type. I don't necessarily know if I agree with that, but maybe it comes easier to us. But I think everyone could say, you don't get all the goodies, right? So with an A-type personality, there are other things that we have to deal with, and inversely, the other way around, right? So
I agree completely. I almost view what you just said in a very much mental health perspective way. I think that, type A's come off as that strong extrovert. And I think there's a lot of people that are type A's, and I would identify this way myself as being somewhat of a introverted, extroverted person at the same time, and operating in those ways depending on which situation I'm in.
I agree. And I actually posted something the other day about that. It's really interesting that you bring that up. But yeah, I mean, look, sometimes about relationship management, introverts can be better at relationship management than extroverts, and vice versa. It really comes down to who you are, what you choose to do, what you're reading, putting into your mind, and then how you're going out there and practicing, getting reps, getting on the phone, getting in front of people, and doing that thing over and over until you become more comfortable and confident. So I love that, Stephen. Thank you for sharing that. Let's move to you. Let's move to understanding. What's one thing you wish you would have understood earlier in your career comparatively to where you are now?
It's a good question.
So looking back on, 13-year-old, 15-year-old, 17-year-old, 21-year-old Stephen, if I wish I would have known that then, it would have saved me a little bit of time.
I think a lot of my life was operating in a shorter term mindset. I'm now starting to build out a team and looking at what do I want to be doing in 10, 20, 30 years from now versus always operating in the sense where how can I make $1, then turn that into two, then turn that into four. It's living in that moment and always being obsessive about the next dollar, I guess you would say, or the next opportunity versus actually looking at it from a larger mindset and recognizing that what you do now is actually going to have an impact on what you do in a year from now or 2 years or 5 years from now. I wish, and I don't like to say live with regrets, but there's always regrets. I wish I had identified that and put that into practice earlier.
But do you think that you've earned that right too, Stephen? Because obviously you've made some money in your career. Obviously, you're probably not worried about, your mortgage next month. But do you think that you've earned the right to start thinking in a bigger picture because you have been so, fundamentally sound getting to where you are now as far as creating that opportunity and space for you to think larger?
I don't give myself credit for that. It's funny where now that I'm sitting down with other people talking about putting together a team and I say, I'm ready now. To your point, of course I'm ready now. If I had the stressors that I had when I started, it wasn't about putting a team together at the time. It was how do I make that dollar? Now, to your point, I can look at it from a macro level and fortunately, put those puzzle pieces in place. But you're right. I sometimes regret and take advantage of the fact that I needed to go through all of those years to get to where I am now.
Well, I think that there's a way that you could potentially, if you're beginning with the end in mind and taking someone who has the experience of you, and I'm a younger version of you, or a guy that aspires to be nationally recognized and closing multi-million dollars in sales and all of that stuff. Maybe I can, position myself where I can tag team. Steven, if he looked back when he got to 33, was like, well, maybe I should have already built a team, or maybe I should have invested here, or maybe I should have thought about this. Maybe you can just add that in. So, all we can do is help and put the information out there, and someone can use it. Take the good and leave the bad, right? That's one of my philosophies.
I like that. I agree with that.
And then last in focus round, we have success. So what do you attribute your success? If you just were kind of going to throw a couple things out, these would be the things that have really made me successful.
Work ethic, persistence by far. Persistence and follow-up, especially in this business, is everything. I mean, I'm looking at my email inbox in one screen right now. There's people that I've legitimately followed up with 20 times over 3 years about the same deal to then get to the point where I could sell it now. If you don't have that mindset and that just innate ability to you don't come off as annoying, but just properly being persistent, following up, that has been a major component to my success.
I love that.